Hello, everyone. We're in the final stretch. I appreciate your attention. I hope your lunch is pleasant. You know, as I said yesterday, one of our major goals for the forum was to be able to really both take stock of what we've learned, but also to leave here both informed and inspired about how we together can chart a course forward to not just improve, but accelerate the improvement of educational outcomes for young people. So we're going to end with a summary of what the Affinity Groups actually talked about to give us some ideas, and so I'm looking forward to that conversation. Before we jump into the summaries, I'm going to ask each of our members to introduce themselves. So why don't we start with you, Ellen?
Hi, everyone. I'm Ellen Moir, and I'm the founder and the CEO of the New Teacher Center. And our work is to accelerate new teacher development through a mentoring model to ultimately improve student learning.
And I'm Lynn Olson, and I'm a deputy director with the College Ready team, and really pleased to be here today. Really work with a lot of our national partners and on knowledge sharing.
My name is Aaryn Schmuhl. I am Assistant Superintendent for Learning and Leadership in Henry County Schools in Georgia. We are a district of about 40,000 kids, 50 schools, and we are engaged really deeply in trying to take personalized learning to scale across our district and doing that in a way that really creates equity for kids, while at the same time having really, really high standards for their learning as they make their way through whatever learning experiences we can create for them inside and outside the walls of our schools.
And I'm Richard Rhodes. I'm president of Austin Community College, and my new most impactful teacher is Allan Golston.
Oh, goodness. Okay, wake up, Allan. Yeah. All right, great, thank you. Nice curveball. I appreciate that. Yes, I'm like, wow, who? So thank you. It's great to have everyone know who you are. So why don't we jump in on the affinity groups, and we'll go in the order that we're seated. So give us a sense of what you all talked about and what you think that we can do to take action and accelerate progress.
Great, thank you, Allan. So the group was fantastic, and there was a lot of great dialogue, and we kind of framed it around we'd be crazy if we didn't blank, right? Because, you know, we want to really be driving actions going forward. And I think obviously we appreciated Bill's learning line. We want to help teachers, right, move up that learning line. And really the question is, how do we do that, right? Just giving them the what's isn't going to be enough. We need to really build in the hows. And so the group, when we thought about like what we'd be crazy if we didn't think about these things or do these things. So one would be to engage teachers in their professional learning. Now, so again, not doing professional learning to them, but really helping them become owners of professional development. That seemed like a really important aspect. Tied to that is to move away from the inputs and start focusing more on the outcomes. And I liked a comment that we heard from someone yesterday, I believe, but let's start looking at what the teachers are giving the students. Right? Let's look at what the students are actually doing and are they learning, instead of all of us thinking about, well, we're doing this kind of professional development or we want teachers to do X, Y, or Z. We ultimately want kids to learn, so let's start looking at the outcomes and the outputs. An interesting part of the conversation was around the systems, that we need to really fix the systems. And these are two interesting aspects, right? One fix needs to be to link pre-K through college completion, right? So that professional learning for pre-K teachers, there's a focus there. And at the other end, there's also a focus on helping higher ed faculty become better at teaching and at learning. So fix that system. And then another aspect of the system that was raised to fix is from pre-service, like what are we teaching pre-service candidates to know and be able to do? And how does that link to induction and the career lives of teachers, and how are we ensuring that we're tightly coupling all these pieces so that students are achieving at higher rates? And then another we'd be crazy if we didn't do was to actually look at other sectors. See how other sectors help their folks learn. I mean, we just haven't gotten it right in education. We're about human capital and talent, but we're just really not figuring this out yet. We just throw out the mandates, and we think it'll stick. And so what do other professions do? And then the final piece that I'll share out is, you know, we were impressed listening to how Bill and Melinda really actually listened to teachers and kind of had a sense of what opportunities they were creating that were sticking with teachers and what things teachers really didn't like. So we want more of that. We want surveys that we really can look at and understand better what teachers are valuing and not valuing. And then tied to that, though, we want student input. We want student surveys to begin to talk about what things they see in their teachers that are effective and what aren't, and all that could get tied to better professional development. And of course, all of us would love to see the systems that professional development lives in be robust and continuous learning and rich, and that teachers can hardly wait to get better and get up that line.
Thank you. I think those things are really on the critical path to elevating the profession. And I think really important, as I was in conversations last evening at dinner, really important to attracting and retaining teachers. We had a really good conversation about the fact that the profession isn't valued, and so when we talk about retaining great teachers and attracting great teachers to the profession, it's not always an attractive setting to go into. So I think the extent that we can do those things well, we just make it really robust, and it's just great for existing teachers, and it's also just great to attract, you know, the teachers that we need to the profession.
I think that's right, Allan. It really gives teachers the message that they count, they matter, we value them, they are the rock stars. And they also, there is an accountability system, and they live within that as well. And so how we make that accountability system be about continuous learning and development and formative feedback that's rich, I think is what we talked about.
That's great.
Thanks.
So Lynn, you were focused on high quality implementation, and that's obviously related to teaching and teacher support and development. So what conclusions did you all leave with?
Yeah, and Ellen and I were talking over lunch, and it was really interesting how similar the conversation was, and also the richness of it, because there were teachers and higher ed folks in the same room. And so a couple of things. One was people talked about the need to start with new teachers and their content knowledge, and also making sure that they actually had deep time to practice in classrooms, and talked about the use of video now in teacher preparation and how that was not only providing great feedback to new teachers, but also to the mentors who are mentoring them to be more effective practitioners. And that led to a conversation about, well, so one part of high quality implementation is what the teacher does, their moves, but the other piece is what's the quality of student work. And how do you know whether it's in K-12 or at higher ed that students are starting to use evidence to make arguments. And so then there was a really interesting piece about how can you use those two things, not only to look at the quality of implementation that's happening around the country, but also as good learning and continuous improvement vehicles for people in the system. And then one theme that came up, you know, which has come up throughout the 2 days, is the issue of time. And how do we both rethink master schedules to give teachers time? How do we have the patience and the time it takes to do good implementation? The other thing we talked about, again, very similar, was that PD is not a one-shot deal. You need, you know, in the end, this all comes down to teaching talent and administrator talent. And you can do some PD up front, but what does continual learning look like for teachers and others in the system? And the importance of engaging teachers from the beginning, or engaging faculty from the beginning, of doing rapid prototyping and iterating. And in that regard, two other things came up that was similar. One is, can we look to other sectors who have a better understanding of process improvement? We know we're not very good at implementation in the education sector. What can we learn from other sectors? And the other piece was, how do we think about policy in a way that allows for continued learning and refinement, so that policy can offer guidance but not detailed mandates that then put things in stone that don't allow continued iteration in the system. So.
Great comments. You were focused on innovative solutions to improve student outcomes, and would love to hear what your group talked about and key things we should be thinking about.
So we started out thinking maybe we were supposed to think about technology solutions, and very quickly moved away from that as the primary core of the discussion and began to discuss really three big ideas. The first and foremost is connecting to that idea of time. Is changing definitions of success and changing definitions of mastery. Currently, we talk about, for example, graduation rates from high school as the number of kids who graduate in 4 years. Is a college less likely to accept a child who has their high school diploma in 5 years? Maybe, maybe not, but isn't the goal that they actually graduated? And so thinking about how we use time differently and how that plays a role in the measures that we have in place. And so that causes a whole host of other things to begin to be put into question. How do you do things like allocations? How do you do things like moving kids from grade level to grade level? And really thinking differently about what is our design of what school is. And perhaps school is not equitable for kids because of the core of its design. And that, you know, when we think about people being afraid of revolution versus evolution, I think it's that fear of failure, but it was brought up, and I think it's a very poignant point that right now we're about as bad as we can get. If 10% of our African American students are not graduating from college, I can't think of anything that's a much greater failure than that. And so there are opportunities for us to provide air cover for innovators to do things that's different, not necessarily programs and all of those things, but the opportunity for them to do that work with some air cover. So that was really a poignant part of what we talked about. And then connecting that to having the different tribes, and we talked about the early learning tribe and the K-12 tribe and the post-secondary tribe, and how that might be, the post-secondary tribe might actually be 2 years and 4 years, and those are warring tribes. I don't know if you can speak to that or not. And then obviously the workforce tribe, and that we all have differing measures of success. And right now we are built around the idea of pre-K gets you ready for K-12, K-12 gets you ready for college, college gets you ready for life. When in actuality, what we're all working towards is creating good contributing citizens just at different places in their lives. So maybe if we change the definition of success, instead of it being about getting ready for the next thing, because it's very challenging to describe what that next thing is holistically, partly because it's not the same at every institution, but also because it's different for every child. Success for every child, it's okay for some of those things to look a little bit differently. So an action step we talked about in 7 years, how would the world look different as a result of us coming together, was really about maybe even at a regional level, having those tribes coming together and taking action steps, because the context that is local for a region is much more meaningful and powerful for folks who are doing action on the ground. And so it can be led by national discussions that point the compass in the right direction, and then the work gets done at a regional level. So that's some of the discussions that we had.
Great. All right. So Aaryn, one of the themes in what you said was personalization, doing things differently, things that are tailored to local areas, et cetera. And I want to turn to Richard, who's led the discussion around personalization and pathways to a degree, which is about personalization to a student. So what did you all talk about, and what can we do to accelerate that type of work?
Okay. Let me just say, we had an incredibly talented and dynamic group that I'm representing here. We didn't talk about tribes specifically, but we did talk about the learning continuum too. But three areas that we kind of focused on, where the conversation drifted to, is one is applied learning, so that students actually can see the relevance to what they're taught in the classroom. And so we talked a great deal about internships, paid internships, and that to start those paid internships, not wait like we do in a lot of cooperative education programs until they're juniors or seniors at the university, but rather start when they're freshmen. in internship experience so that they know the career pathway that they're going down, and so that it is more personalized in that. But also then the conversation went and said, we need to do it earlier than that. We've got to have, it may not be a paid internship, but we've got to have the opportunities for students to get career exploration in a deeper and more challenging way, whether that might be in the form of mentoring, but some type of deep career exploration so that they get on a pathway and can experience that and see it. The second thing that we talked about was how do you begin to scale some of these promising practices? And so we talked about case study methodology and being very specific about how we go about that, using the power of the media, but also using the power of the story when we talk about this. And so explain what the problem is that we're trying to digest. And then what is the solution or the value proposition, secondly? And then what did you do to try to overcome this? And what was the result? Was it good or bad? But tell the whole story. And there was a weariness, I think, in the group about that it's not about the shiny new object in technology, but what is the service of the technology that adds to the delivery of ultimately the goal to the student. And then the third area that we talked about is see or do or experience what we're talking about, because oftentimes we're good sometimes as educators about telling others what to do and what's best for them, but have we experienced that ourselves? And so putting ourselves sometimes in that experiential path is important for us to understand the full problem area. And I gave an example that when we talk about college readiness and college placement exams, have we ever sat down and taken one of those ourselves? And so I did that. No. I did that. I took the Accuplacer exam, and I'm a PhD and I'm a CPA. I was very good in mathematics at one time, and so I thought I would focus on my strength, mathematics, and I sat down at that computer and tried to take it, and quickly learned that I was a developmental math student. Oh. And that puts us in the shoes, so walking in the shoes of the student and seeing what it is that they're going through in that personalized experience of getting registered for classes and going into a class. What is it? What's the trauma that they're going through? Because it's a very humbling experience.
Great, great. Well, thank you. Why don't we give our colleagues in our panel a round of applause? Thank you. Really appreciate that. So just to close, I just want to thank you for your presence and your engagement and your time and your connections, your feedback, sharing your expertise and your wisdom with all of us about how we can chart a course forward. And I'm really excited, not just about how far we've come, mindful of the challenges and the fact that it's not enough, but I'm really energized about what's possible. And I think that we showcased a lot in the last 2 days about what's possible and possible at scale. So we at the foundation are very committed to this work, as you got from Bill and Melinda, and I want to just, on behalf of the foundation and personally, thank you for your commitment to this work and to your partnership in this important work. And I wish you safe travels to your respective homes, and we'll look forward to seeing you and connecting and working together in the months and the years ahead. Thank you.